Well, hello, my name is Jenny, and in 2024, I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail. One of the biggest questions that I receive is, what did I eat? I'm going to go over everything that I ate on trail, what my favorite foods were, how I handled resupply, and lastly, I'm going to talk about how I used nutrition to try and help compensate the amount of energy I was expending. Starting with breakfast, I typically had a packet of oatmeal and hot tea. One tip I learned was to buy the Kodiak oatmeals because they tended to taste better. And if you could find the Peak Kodiak packets, they had more calories and nutrients than the Quaker packets. The tea packets I bought off of Amazon, and I would have some brought or mailed to me every 2 weeks as part of my resupply, and I will talk about that later. I was never a big eater for breakfast, so usually I would just have that light breakfast and then I would start walking and then I would have some snacks as I went through the day. My favorite snacks were the Nature's Valley dark chocolate peanut butter bars and the Bobo's PB&J bars. I really enjoyed having peanut butter on the trail, and in fact, I would take the honey stinger waffles and I would top those with peanut butter as well. So I think I really did end up eating a lot of peanut butter. I also would buy the little emerald nut packets. Sometimes I would get fruit snacks, and whenever I could, I would buy cheese. So in the beginning, it was easier to keep the cheese fresh because it was so cold, but as it started to warm up, your cheese starts to create an oil and it just gets really messy. So how I dealt with that, I would buy the Baby Bell cheeses. So they come wrapped in wax, and also they would come wrapped in plastic. So I would just buy the mesh bag of them and then take off all the plastic but leave it in the wax because I think it would keep the cheese fresher longer. But I never had a problem with that going bad or oil separating or anything. So I'd buy a bunch of those and then I would snack on them, and I would also even add them to my backpacking meals when I got to camp. I'm not a huge sweets person, so I did not eat a lot of candy or anything on the trail, although I started to increase that when I noticed a weird smell in my sweat. It smelled like vinegar, and the only thing I could figure out was that maybe this is caused by not having enough carbs. So I think that adding in the extra carbs helped with that. Dinner was typically a backpacking meal from Good to Go, which I would get in my resupply boxes. I would add chicken or tuna packets to them. I would add the cheese, as I mentioned, and I would carry a little thing of salt around with me in case it needed some extra flavoring. One thing I also started to do when I noticed myself losing weight is I would bring a bottle of olive oil and then I would add some of that to the meals as well. I really liked these meals, and they were my go-to for backpacking meals because they're all gluten-free and I eat a low gluten diet. I've actually recently partnered with Good to Go because I've been really happy with their meals. So if you're interested in these meals, there's a link in the description, and if you use the code WELLHELLO, you will get a 15% off your order. My favorite meals from them are the mushroom risotto and the pasta marinara. And both of those I would add Parmesan cheese to. And sometimes I would put extra seasoning like salt and crushed red pepper flakes. If I ran out of Good to Go meals, I would buy ramen noodles and mac and cheese, and I would add a lot of the same ingredients that I already mentioned to them, like the chicken, the cheese, the olive oil. I also carried around these packets of Harmony House dehydrated vegetables so I could feel like I was being healthier by adding some dried veggies to whatever I was eating. Sometimes for a treat, I would buy avocados and then I would make avocado wraps with olive oil, salt, lemon juice, and that was really tasty, but pretty heavy. So usually that would be the first thing I would eat coming out of town. I typically had 2 electrolyte packets per day from Liquid IV. So I would put half of one in my 16-ounce water bottle. Then when I drank that, put the rest in and just kind of sip on that over the course of the day. A nice treat that I would sometimes enjoy was I'd buy packets of Land O'Lakes hot cocoa and I would make hot cocoa at camp. So I want to talk about Resupply. I did a hybrid Resupply box plus restocking in town. And the reason I chose to do this was I had some things at home that I didn't think that I would be able to get easily in a town. So I had very specific vitamins that I was taking where I would have had to buy like several different bottles of stuff and then carry all of that with me. And for me, it was just easier to pre-measure it all out into baggies and just have one just tossed in my box. So since I was going to be doing that, I also decided I was going to get some of my meals that I had pre-bought brought to me or shipped to me, as well as all of my liquid IVs. So I'd get a box every 2 weeks and they weren't all mailed to me. Some of them were, and then other times my boyfriend at the time would bring them to me on his visit. Since he was coming anyway, might as well bring me a resupply box while he was at it. Whenever I ran out of food, I would just, whatever town I was in, I would buy enough to get me through to my next box. I think this ended up working out, especially since I was having someone who was fairly consistently coming to visit. I don't think it saved any money, especially like if you factor in the cost of shipping plus if Brian spent money on a rental car or hotel rooms, things like that. His flights were free, but with the times that he would drive, he's spending gas money and things like that. So it was a big expense for him. Even if it saved me money, the money was coming from somewhere. So, if you're in a relationship, it probably net doesn't really save you any money, but if you're doing it anyway, like why not bring a box? And for me, it was also worth the peace of mind that I was going to be able to get what I needed. Food was something I really worried about when I started my hike. That's probably the thing I worried about the most, because I remembered losing weight on my long trail through hike, and that was only a month, and this was going to be a much longer trip. So I was like, well, I don't think I can afford to lose that much more weight. And I did end up losing a few pounds pretty early on, which worried me. So at that point, I was like, okay, I just need to make myself eat more. So I would go into town, I'd like eat a bunch of food. And then that's when I started adding like the olive oil and stuff to my meals and just making sure I was eating extra food. And between that and I don't know, maybe some equilibrium kicked in, but my weight loss stopped and I was fine for the rest of the hike. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself not to worry and I could always add in more food as I went. But one thing I will say is that the weight comes back pretty quickly after you stop hiking. So even if you do end up losing weight, I think you can gain that back pretty easily. So that about covers all of the AT food I ate, my resupply, and my personal journey with weight loss and nutrition. And I think it all worked out very nicely. And I'd probably do something similar again if I had the resources. If you've done a through hike before, let me know in the comments how you handled food and resupply. I'd be interested to know that. But just as a personal life update, I'm doing okay. I appreciated people's comments on how through hiking changed me and the end of my relationship and all that. And I'm in the middle of planning a couple trips right now, and I'm getting pretty excited about it. It's taking a while to kind of put everything together, but I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. There's a time for backpacking and through hiking, and that time is typically summer, with some exceptions of vacation weeks and long weekends and all that. But the other part of backpacking and through hiking that I enjoy is the planning, and so I get to do the planning part right now, and that's been really fun. And I love the puzzle, being able to put together an itinerary and where am I going to sleep, and just dreaming about the possibilities. And it's almost like an adventure in itself, because you're kind of picturing yourself doing these things. So that's fun for me, and so I'm enjoying that, kind of getting back into the planning aspect of things. And then summer Jenny gets to execute the plan, and I am looking forward to taking you with me on my next adventure coming up really soon. Thank you for watching, and happy trails.